Hello and welcome to Protect Ukraine Now YouTube channel. I do not have a crystal ball and I can't tell you the future. However, there are certain changes in President Trump's inner circle that make me feel very optimistic. Today, I'm going to show you my interview with a dear friend of mine, Bill Cole. Bill is a steadfast advocate for Ukraine, and he is also the founder of Peace Through Strands Institute. We're going to discuss the events of the past several weeks, and we're going to reflect on that. Hi, Bill. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on this recording, and very glad to see you. And we just came from DC, where we spent some good time together, and of course, many other people meeting with Congress people, senators. But first, maybe start with a few words about yourself. You are a Peace Through Strands Institute founder. You have ran humanitarian missions to Ukraine. You obviously doing a lot of advocacy in DC. But tell us more.
Sure. First, Alex, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And like you said, you and I have become dear friends, and I'm very grateful for that. I think it's probably best just to give your audience kind of a sense of who I am, right, to start. Um, I was born in a little town, Martinsville, Virginia, textile furniture town, at least when I was a young child. Um, so I'm a Virginia boy, Virginia native. Went to school in Virginia, went to college in Virginia, University of Virginia, and then decided to branch out. I've lived in New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Madrid for a short bit of time, and then ultimately made my way to California. So right now I'm a California resident. I've been a California resident for 25 years. I'm a software sales guy. So I've been selling software for too long. Uh, I have a wonderful family. I have 5 grown sons, and I have grandchildren, 3 grandchildren. Uh, so let's get to the top, sort of the topic that we want to talk about, right? So that's a little bit of background on me. But why have I gotten to a position where I have founded something like the Peace Through Strength Institute that you mentioned? So let's talk a little bit about that. So
This is a new organization. It came as a result of our recent trip to Washington, where we met with several senators and representatives, and
yeah,
we brought them some ideas of how this war can end, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So Alec, back in 2022, February 2022, I was certainly appalled and disgusted by what I saw in Ukraine. I also was probably a typical American. Mm, I thought that it would end in 3 days, and I thought the unfortunate end would come and that Russia would occupy all of Ukraine. I was pleasantly surprised, and that Ukraine fought back. Ukrainians fought back and turned this into an unbelievable fight. And now here we are, 3.5 years later, and we're trying to find a way to get to a just end and a just peace for the people and the country of Ukraine, right? So, what about my life in 2022? I mean, had a life. I mentioned earlier, I have a big family, I have a job, need to focus on. But at the end of 2022, I was activated. I was activated and motivated by a dear friend. That dear friend really pointed me in a direction to go pay attention to Ukraine, pay attention to what's happening in Ukraine. It's bigger than just Ukraine, Bill. It's bigger than Ukraine. This is a global problem. So I did just that. I started to educate myself. And one of the things that I recognize in my education is I need to go to Ukraine. If I really want to understand what's happening there and really want to play a part in trying to help and get my country and the country of Ukraine in the right direction towards ultimate peace, I needed to discover the ground truth for myself. So in the past 2 years, I've been to Ukraine multiple times. Usually when I go, Alec, I spend a month or a month and a half, and really have tried to embed myself in a lot of work, humanitarian aid work. I'm advising a number of companies. I've done sermons in Ukraine. I have memorialized American soldiers who lost their lives in Ukraine fighting for Ukraine's freedom. So I've tried to immerse myself in a number of activities to help support the effort. One thing that was clear to me also in going to Ukraine and spending time with lots of people is that one area where I could have a significant impact is get myself to Washington and get in front of Congress and try and get in front of the White House to try and make a difference. So I found the American Coalition for Ukraine. I found their partnership with Nova Ukraine and Razum, and I saw where they were doing summits every 6 months.
And that's where we met.
Yeah, and that's where we met, Alec. We met in April of 2024 at the ACU Action Summit for Ukraine last April. And so I showed up like all 600 of us as a constituent of California, and I followed their plan, which is a brilliant plan, to go in and meet with as many congressional members as possible, right? Mm-hmm. But I also found myself in the audience with a panel in front of me. And the panel was 4 amazing women: Terry Lawrence, Carla Weber, Megan Mobbs, and Lauren Guillaume. Lauren, at the time, worked for Razum, and she was moderating this panel. Terry Lawrence is the mother of Lance Lawrence, who was lost in Ukraine, 28-year-old American soldier who was killed in Ukraine in 2023. Carla Weber is the mother of Andrew Weber, who also was killed in the same attack as Lance Lawrence. Andrew Weber was killed at the same time as Lance. Megan Mobbs is the CEO and president of the Weatherman Foundation. And the Weatherman Foundation was sponsoring Terry and Carla to attend the summit. Well, in the fall of 2023, I had the privilege and the honor of meeting several of Lance and Andrew's brothers in arms in Ukraine. They were in Kyiv doing rehab work on various injuries. And they talked at length about Lance and Andrew. At the time, I did not connect the dots back to Megan or back to Carla or back to Terry. I just heard their stories about their 2 brothers that had died, killed in action. So there I am in the audience at this summit, Alec, and I just start crying, listening to these 2 moms and to Megan. I said to myself, I have to approach them. I have to meet them and greet them and tell them the amazing stories I heard about their sons. So I did that. I was able to meet them, talk to them, and here's the glorious part of this story. Those 2 moms and a third mom, Allison McGowan, whose son Jericho was also killed in action in Ukraine, they walked the halls with me in Congress, and we attended a number of meetings. Their stories absolutely resonated with Congress, and specifically resonated with Speaker Mike Johnson. And if you go back to April 2024, Alec, when our great country passed a supplemental bill for Ukraine, Speaker Mike Johnson gave an amazing speech. And in that speech, he said, I do not want my 18-year-old son, who is going to the Naval Academy this fall, to be in a war like this. I knew at that moment in time, Alec, that he had listened to the stories of those 3 moms. So that was my first experience at an Action Summit. And then we can talk about future summits. I went to the summit in September. You and I got a little closer in that September 2024 summit. And then we'll come up to the most recent summit, April 2024, 2025, where you and I got really close and put together some amazing plans that we're going to talk about in this interview. So,
Yeah, if I may add, those in fact amazing women. I of course listened to them too back in fall 2023. One thing that definitely like I remember is one of them mentioned a conversation they had with someone in their circle, and they asked them, why would your son go and sacrifice his life and do this sort of commitment to Ukraine? And her response was, why wouldn't he? And it just struck me so deeply because there are just people who feel they are they have to step in where there's a gap, where there's not enough leadership, not enough work is done by those who are supposed to, namely our government or governments of other countries. So they feel that they need to step in and do their part. And that's just heartwarming. And I wish we had more people that are so responsible about their duties.
yeah, Alec, I know because I know we America, we have sent, I should say, they have volunteered 3,000 plus Americans, men and women, have volunteered to go to Ukraine and fight.
Resound.
And we've lost probably 80 of those men and women. I don't think we've lost a female, but we lost 80 men in this war. And I want to pick up on what you're saying about why, right? I think to a man and to a woman, they all have the same philosophy, which is they could not stand watching a bully take advantage of innocent people, completely innocent people. And specifically, Jericho McGowan, that was his absolute reason. He told his mother, I cannot stand by and watch a bully take advantage of other humans like this. So I'm going. By the way, most of these men and women have come back and go back. Jericho went and fought and then came back and then went back. Jericho left this war with two little kids. So to put a fine point on some of your words, these are heroes. These are amazing human beings that made a human decision, not an American decision, not a Ukrainian decision, a human decision. So I'm proud of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we say someone is a hero, at least in my mind, that means they're capable of what most other people are not, and they doing things no, so many can't. They don't have that vision, that determination, that sort of sense of responsibility.
That's correct.
Right. So this particular trip to Washington, I think it was special. I feel like we have accomplished far more than in the previous trips to Washington. Uh, I feel I feel hopeful. I feel like things are changing and certain wheels begin to turn. What do you think about it? What's your take on our trip?
Well, put it this way, Alec. Uh, you and I got together ahead of this summit and decided that we needed to take a direction on our own, right? So I applaud the work of the ACU and Raz and others, and what they're doing is amazing. But you and I knew that we needed to unlock some things in a maybe a different way, right? So we put together a plan to go after certain members of Congress in a very specific way. We had some amazing meetings. And I want to point to one meeting in particular that I think, in my opinion, has gotten us to the point of today, May 4th, 2025. And that's the meeting we had with the offices of Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal. We met with their staff. We laid out sort of our vision of a peace through strength plan with them, had a conversation with them. We asked them, does this align with your boss, in this case, uh, Senator Graham. Because if you remember to that meeting, Senator Blumenthal's staff member had left the meeting. He had to leave early. So we were able to really have a close conversation with the staff member from Senator Graham's office. And he let us know Senator Graham's position on things. And it did align with our plan. And what we did from that meeting, Alec, a couple of things. Number one, we came back and we started the Peace Through Strength Institute. We founded that, we made that official, and we put a stamp on that. Underneath that founding, we created a 3-pillar victory plan. That 3-pillar victory plan resonated and actually was authored by the words of the staff member from Lindsey Graham's office. Number one, put together an expansive economic partnership between the United States and Ukraine. Number one. Number two, arm them to the teeth. What does that mean? Well, 2 weeks ago, that meant arm them to the teeth so they could create defensive infrastructure so this type of invasion could never happen again. Now, we're going to talk later about how number two has now changed a little bit with current activities over the past week or so, right? Number three, sanctions. So at that time, a few weeks ago, Senate Bill 1241 had been authored by Graham and Blumenthal. House of Rep Bill HR 2548 had also been authored by Brian Fitzpatrick, Joe Wilson, and others. So we had a tool to move forward on sanctions. That 3-pillar victory plan, in my opinion, has now been stamped and is being implemented by the White House and ultimately by Congress. And let me tell you why I'm saying that with such sort of conviction. I woke up a few weeks ago, probably, I think it was before the summit, after the summit, I'm not sure, and looked at my Instagram. And a gentleman by the name of Mark Burns showed up on my screen. Pastor Mark Burns. Pastor Mark Burns, I discovered quickly, is one of Donald Trump, one of President Trump's pastors. He was in Ukraine. He was walking the streets of Busha with Rabbi Azam. I apologize if I mispronounced his last name, who is the chief rabbi of Ukraine. And I was completely blown away by what I was seeing. And then I saw where Pastor Mark was publishing everything. Quote unquote, America, you've been lied to. What's going on in Ukraine is nothing that you've been told. And we, as a country, need to step up. I think Mark was there for a couple of weeks. So I took it upon myself to get real close to Mark. Mark and I are brothers now. We are brothers in arms. We are brothers in Christ. We are best friends. I've had many conversations with Mark and shared many things with him. One of the things that I shared with him was the 3-pillar victory plan. Mark took that plan and communicated that to the world in an interview with BBC. Really important. But more importantly, Mark took that plan and communicated that to President Donald Trump. On the Friday before President Donald Trump went to Italy to attend the funeral of the Pope. So when the world saw President Donald Trump and President Zelensky face to face for 15 minutes in a very thoughtful conversation, our president had the words and the wisdom and the moral clarity from Pastor Mark Burns. So I've always known, probably from the day I had the first conversation with my friend that I told you about, that God was at work here, but I never thought it this clearly. God is at work here, Alec, and what we're seeing now is the entire thing being played out. And what I would like to do with you is obviously continue this conversation, and let's talk about what's currently happening here on May 4th, 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill, I just want maybe just say it one more time for everyone listening to this video. You and I and several other people came up with a piece through strands paper, white paper that we put together for our visit to DC a few weeks ago. And this document made its way not only to Congress, but to Pastor Mark Burns. And hopefully that document was also either was seen by the president, or perhaps he have heard talk points from that piece of paper verbally communicated by Pastor Burns. And the reason I'm underscoring this is obviously not to brag, but rather for everyone who is an advocate for Ukraine to be inspired and think about meaningful ways that we actually make a difference. The
That's right.
work we do is very difficult at times because, frankly, there's no feedback. You don't know if you were heard. You don't know if people acting based on your opinion, based on the work you do. And this is like, a payback time. You get some feedback, and you really know that your work was no, you can call it a success because you were heard. You were heard. So it's very important. That's amazing for me to know, and hopefully that will inspire other people to do their best to help Ukraine.
Yeah, Alec, 100% agree. And I think you and I know that part of our focus has to be getting the Republican side of the aisle deeply engaged and involved, getting the president deeply engaged and involved by providing ground truth positions. Because let's be real, up to our election in November of 2024, the ground truth was not being communicated properly. I mean, sure, we did a lot for Ukraine, but there was lack of plan, there was lack of timeline, there was lack of true commitment. I mean, sure, we heard a lot about we'll stand with you forever, but what we didn't hear, and what the Republicans didn't hear, and what President Trump didn't hear was, okay, what's the plan though to end the war and to bring a just peace to Ukraine? What's the real documented plan? And so I'm energized and excited to see now, not even 100 days in, that we're headed in that direction. We're headed in that direction because it's important. It's important to head in that direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can talk a little about President Trump and his evolution towards where hopefully he is at right now, because he
Yeah.
started his campaign promise to end the
Yep.
war in a matter of days. This wasn't a reasonable assumption to begin with. Many of us who deeper understand the reasons behind this war of aggression against Ukraine, we knew it wouldn't be that simple. And hopefully the president also getting to that understanding. And frankly, the latest news that the US is withdrawing from peace negotiations, I think these are good news
Mhm.
because finally president understands that he's been going in circles with Putin, and he's not interested in real peace. And these conversations will yield no real results. So he's stopping that, and hopefully we're going back to pillar number two, which is arming Ukraine to the teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say this. Look, Vladimir Putin, and I've said this before, Vladimir Putin, when he messed with Ukrainians, he definitely messed with the wrong people. Okay. He absolutely messed with the wrong people. I know Ukrainians very well now. He messed with the wrong people. He also messed with the wrong person in this man. And what I've discovered in the past month is that he messed with the wrong person in Pastor Mark Burns. And I'm going to say it. He messed with the wrong person when he messed with Donald Trump, when he messed with our president. I know that the media uh, wants to lean into Donald Trump, our president, is friends with Vladimir Putin, and has a soft heart for Russia and for Putin. Come on. No, he does not. He absolutely does not. What being president of the United States is maybe the toughest job on planet Earth, right? It's complex. So what I have seen in the past month, and look, President Donald Trump didn't believe he would get this war done in one day. I didn't believe that. Anyone who believed that is just foolishly buying into some sort of soundbite, right? We all knew this was going to take, and he knew this was going to take some work. So where we are inside of his first 100 days is a miracle where we are, because we're going to talk about where we are. It took a little bit of time. It took an awful meeting. It took an awful meeting in Washington between President Zelensky and Vice President Vance and President Trump. But we're past that.
Total fiasco, but yes, we moved on.
We're past that. We're past that. I mean, this is, in every relationship, there's good, bad, and ugly. That was an ugly moment. But guess what? We're on to goodness. Last Saturday, 15-minute meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky was iconic, historic. It will go down in history based on the outcomes that are going to happen as maybe one of the greatest meetings ever between two world leaders. So where are we today? Well, in the past few days, Alec, we know we've signed an amazing economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine. This is a long-term partnership. This is going to be about military. This is going to be about industry. This is going to be about education. This is going to be about churches and schools. This is going to be about healthcare. This is going to be an incredible cohesive partnership between two great countries that may have never been done before. And it's going to be long-term. It's going to last for decades, because Ukraine is going to need amazing support, not only from the United States in this partnership, but also from Europe to rebuild, rebirth, revitalize their country. But what we've done now, we built a bridge. We have a bridge between the United States and Ukraine. It's a bilateral bridge. And we're going to start walking it back and forth until we get to some great points, some great endpoints, right? So we did that. We go back to our three-pillar plan. What was number one? Economic partnership. Check that box. Yep. Now we're on to number two. Arm them to the teeth. As I said earlier, arm them to the teeth a month ago looked like, let's focus in on defensive infrastructure. Let's really build a wall. Let's build a wall of defense. Let's give them air defense so this never happens again. If it does happen again, it can be contained quickly, right? Well, at the same time, in parallel, the United States was working hard to try and bring Russia and Ukraine to the table in a three-way conversation. At the same time the economic partnership was signed, the president and his team decided we can no longer do this. Vladimir Putin will not cooperate. He's not going to cooperate. So the public statement is, we're backing out of the peace talks. Like you said, that's a good thing, because what did we see immediately after that? All of a sudden, aid is flowing. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, or maybe Friday, $310 million worth of F-16 parts and training mechanisms were sent to Ukraine. You're going to see that over and over again. We are going to continue to unlock shipments to put them in a position to win and to create a position in their country that can last for decades, for the decades of the economic partnership. We certainly don't want to get involved in economic partnership where a country is taken over by Russia. We will do everything in our power to strengthen that relationship and weaken Russia and get them out of Ukraine. And when we get them out of Ukraine and weaken them, that's going to help us in other parts of the world. That's going to help us in other conflicts or other wars that might start based on their aggressions. So let's temper their aggressions down to a point where they're not able to be so active. Let's also interrupt their partnership with China. Let's interrupt that, right? That will help us with China. And so let's talk about this, and let's also touch on what's happening with sanctions. Sanction Bill 2548, moving. What will happen with that is we're right now at about 62 senators that have bought into S1241.
Yeah.
We can get that to about 67. It'll get marked up in committee, and it will get approved.
I believe at least 54 senators co-sponsored that bill. That's more than a verbal support. That's a lot, and that tells me that Senate is going to pass that bill the moment they vote on it. We just need to work with the House so they do the same.
Well, the way it works, Alec, is you get to a point where you have so many commitments that the president doesn't have veto power, and the president will give the green light to Lindsey Graham. He'll give the green light to Lindsey to go ahead and get this done, because the president has said out loud, we need to have sanctions on Russia, and there are details coming out now about serious sanctions, not only on Russia, but any country that decides to purchase Russia energy.
Yeah.
Think about Germany.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have huge tariffs put on them for purchasing, Russian energy. So that's huge. This is huge.
Yeah.
It's the third point in our plan.
Yeah, and Senator Kennedy is also a very big supporter of sanctions on Russia. And he is very openly saying that we're going to turn Russia and Putin into fish food. And he also clarifies that he doesn't mean any military action against Russia, but rather stiff sanctions that are going to take huge toll on Russian economy.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Senator Kennedy's words. I love the way he says Putin, and I love his imagery of we're going to turn Russia to fish food. They should be paying attention because we're serious. We're going to make this happen. We're moving forward with our plan. And I think that many senators have said this. Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. And so when this thing is done, he will be arrested. He will be tried. And if convicted, he will be executed.
Yeah.
They have not minced words, whether it's Senator Wicker, Senator Kennedy, Senator Tillis. They're very firm about this because they know. Now, people probably expect our president to say the same things. That will not work. You cannot have the president of the United States being that vicious, no matter who Vladimir Putin is. So I think people need to, take a deep breath when you hear statements from President Trump. Take a deep breath and understand the kind of pressure that he's under. Okay.
But before Putin goes on trial for crimes he has committed, that's very important that we keep on sanctions on Russia for as long as they occupy someone else's, in this case, Ukraine territory. And we be very firm and we don't take any steps back on that. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely, Alec. And there are things that need to be part of whatever peace plan is put in place. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure there will be a peace plan other than you're gone from Ukraine and here are the terms of your exit. We want all 20,000 kids returned. All 20,000 kids returned. Okay. And by the way, the 250 billion in assets that you have in Brussels, they're ours.
Yeah.
They're ours. They're Ukraine's. We'll
And
wave goodbye to those.
there's
Yeah,
already some motion that I've read about for transferring some of those funds to entities that lost money in Russia because Russia confiscated their sovereign assets. And they're now being compensated through those funds arrested in Europe. And that's a great precedent because the rest of that money should go into Ukraine for military support and other forms of assistance, but military is first.
absolutely.
Great. We have amazing leaders like Pastor Mark Burns, Senator Lindsey Graham, Congressman Don Bacon, Brian Fitzpatrick, John Kennedy, we just mentioned, Senator, I should say John Kennedy, we just mentioned. What can we do as a community to help and support those leaders uh, in their fight to help Ukraine? I believe
Yeah,
they.
great question. And I'm glad you mentioned Congressman Don Bacon. Um, at the September Action Summit, September 2024, um, another honor and privilege. I had the honor and privilege of attending meetings with a guy who goes by the call sign Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a Ukrainian veteran. He survived the Azovstal plant uh, situation where Russia sort of imprisoned a number of civilians and Azov members, Azov brigade members in a steel plant. He lost his leg in the last day of that aggression, and was in a Russian prison for 6 months without his leg. He's now a couple years later. He's now with a prosthetic leg, and he's been to Washington many times. So I had the honor of taking Wikipedia to a number of meetings. One of the meetings that we went to was with Congressman Don Bacon. Congressman Don Bacon is from Nebraska. I have a personal connection to Nebraska. My great grandfather was head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers in 1907 to 1910. So for me personally, I was able to connect with the congressman, and certainly with Wikipedia, I was able to really unlock a good conversation with his chief of staff, Mark Dreiling, and also with Congressman Bacon. And so from that moment forward, September 2024, I've spent a lot of time with the congressman, a lot of time with Mark, his chief of staff, to help build the peace restraint plan that you and I presented to a number of congressmen several weeks ago at our summit. So although Don has an interesting relationship right now with President Trump, he's on a he's having to protect certain things, and I understand that. But also at the same time, he's ready. He's ready that when the president's ready to get involved on Ukraine. And Don has been to Ukraine. Don has been to the front. Don is completely aligned with our institute. He's completely aligned with me personally on how to handle Ukraine. And so I think to answer your question, what can we do? Do exactly what I just said. Anyone who is an advocate for Ukraine needs to really clearly communicate to your representative or your senator your position on Ukraine. Keep it to a minimum. You give them 2 or 3 things that they can relay and relay and relay. It has to be very bipartisan. It cannot lean in to one direction or the other. It cannot be complex. It cannot be confusing. And sadly, it needs to be more empathetic than sympathetic. It really needs to reveal the ground truth in a way that ties America to Ukraine, in a way that ties America to Ukraine. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, Americans are just like Ukrainians. We want freedom. We want the right to say what we want to say. We want the right to do whatever job we want to do. We want the right to be happy on our own at the
Yeah,
end of the day, at the end of every day. And
yeah,
so I think if we can continue, if you're an advocate for Ukraine and you want to have a conversation with your senator or your rep, that's what you express. I believe that Ukraine is the shield for freedom, not only for themselves, but for Europe and for the United States. Because if we can help them get rid of Russia, then we can lower risk with China, Iran, North Korea. By the way, all four of those are in Ukraine. North Korea is in Ukraine fighting. Russia clearly is in Ukraine fighting. Iran is sending drones to Russia to attack civilians. And we now know that China is involved in Ukraine. So they consume Ukraine, then they continue to consume Europe, and then ultimately they come through the Arctic, they come through Alaska, they try and consume the United States. The last thing that I want is for our country, or any country for that matter, to be looking down at their phone, go to the shelter. It's time to go to the shelter. You could be in school, you could be at your job, go to the shelter time. That's what they've been doing in Ukraine for 3.5 years. So none of us should want that for anyone else. And so we need to continue to lean into that bridge that we've built. We need to foster that bridge. So have those conversations. Don't be afraid. Pick up the phone. If you get a staff member, talk to the staff member and make sure they relay the information to their boss. So that's one way to get involved.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, Bill, I think every time that at least Ukrainians have concrete walls in of their apartments, and they're far more capable of stopping explosions that than walls that most Americans' homes are made of. We are definitely not prepared for any war similar to what's happening in Ukraine right now, and we'll have to dig a lot of bomb shelters if, God forbid, that comes here. So we rather stop Russia where they are today and not allow that happen to on our land here.
Yeah, well, let me even put a finer point on it. I'll give an example for your audience that's not about Ukraine, right? The company I work for today, for Telex Software Sales, is based in Tel Aviv. So I've been to Tel Aviv. I've spent time in Israel, and you probably know this, Alec. You build a house in Israel, or you build an apartment, or you buy an apartment. Every single structure has to have a safe room,
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
equivalent of a bomb shelter,
I
equivalent of a bomb shelter.
actually lived in Israel for 4 years, so I lived in an apartment that had this sort of bunker room on the first floor.
Yeah. So I think maybe that if someone is still on the fence about Ukraine, then think about Israel. Do you want to live like that? Because the same aggressors in Israel, Hamas, Iran, it's the same aggressor as Russia in Ukraine, North Korea in Ukraine. These are all the same aggressors. Aggressors. This is the axis of evil. It's the axis of evil. And so, unfortunately, Israel and Ukraine and others have been impacted by these aggressors. I mean, moving forward, when Ukraine builds a school, it'll probably be built underground because they don't trust that 20 years from now, or 30 years from now, or 50 years from now, Russia won't try this again. Same thing in Israel. They've had to protect themselves from the possibility that they are attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add that everyone in United States, Europe, everyone who has an opportunity to support Ukraine, they need to understand that this is not charity. What happens in Ukraine happens not to some remote people. This happens to us. It happens to free world communities that want to live way of life that gives us prosperity, freedoms, opportunity to travel, opportunity to build our own businesses, everything that authoritarian regimes like Russia or China, North Korea, 100% against. There are opposition, there are ideological opposition, and we need to stay on the side of light. Right? If for
Yeah, Alec, let's put a fine point on this for Americans, okay? Um, let's put a fine point on what you're saying for Americans because Americans like to get to the point, right?
yes,
Funds. Let's say this. Let's say we, the United States, moving forward, we decide to support the development of drones, which is really needed. 80% of this war is drones right now. We decide to give a few $1 billion to Ukraine to build drones. Ukraine will build those drones in Ukraine under the partnership with the United States for $500, $600 per drone. Very efficient, very economical, right? So those few $1 billion will go a long ways, right? We know from analysis that if we were trying to replicate the same thing here in the United States, we would spend $20,000 to $50,000 per drone to create similar defensive structures, say on our northern border, Greenland, say our northern border to protect us from the Arctic incursion, or in Alaska to protect us from that incursion. We're only 80 kilometers from Russia and Alaska. So do quick math, Americans. Let's take the average, 35,000. So 35,000 times versus 400 or 500 times. You see where I'm going with this. If we need to defend ourselves to the level that Ukraine is needing to defend itself in Ukraine, we will spend trillions, trillions, trillions plural, just in drones.
probably tens of trillions. Right?
Yeah,
Given
tens
the
of trillions. So look, let's lean in to the president's plan, which is May 4th, 2025, arm them to the teeth. Let's lean into that, America. Spend a few billion inside of our partnership, which means we get return. Okay, we get return. And some of those weapons might be built in the United States too, which means jobs. Let's lean into that. Get Russia out of Ukraine so we don't have to go spend trillions defending ourselves against them in the future.
Absolutely. Bill, it's a great pleasure and great honor working with you on helping Ukraine. I so much appreciate you coming to my YouTube or Protect Ukraine Now YouTube channel, I should say. And I look forward to more amazing work that is definitely ahead of us. I also hope that in some near future, we'll be able to do another recording and report on more success and more results that we'll be proud to discuss with our audience.
Alec, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. And just so your audience knows, Alec and I have gotten really close, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop fighting until Ukraine is whole again, whole and free, and living life like Americans like to live it, with complete freedom and ability to do what you want to do with your life. So thank you, Alec. I really appreciate it.
But we need support from everyone listening to this video. So please call your senators, call your representatives, and ask them to support Ukraine.
Absolutely. 1-202-225-3121 or 1-202-224-3121. If I can memorize those numbers, so can you. Let's go for it.
Or you can do it like I do and add it to your phone book so you don't have to remember them.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Okay, Bill, good seeing you.
Yeah, good seeing you, Alec. Thank you so much.
Thanks.